Believe it or not, the next iPhone is only 6 months away. So in this episode of the Macworld Podcast, we're covering the latest iPhone rumors and whether or not you'll be able to afford the new phone. It's all on today's show. Welcome to the Macworld Podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
If it feels a little premature to start talking about the next iPhone, and consider that likely we aren't going to see a major product announcement or a major hardware announcement between now and the September iPhone unveiling. So we thought it'd be a good time to talk about some iPhone rumors, especially because they're starting to pick up right now.
Yeah, well, this is the time. You said 6 months. It's actually 5 months. This is when, things go to production, things start manufacturing, leaks start. There's always leaks, but now they're, actual, okay, these are, from a source. Some supplier somewhere sent it to someone, or someone snapped a picture and sent it to some. So, these are more believable and generally corroborate.
Yeah, around this time, they're doing sort of test production, which is it's not prototypes, but it's small manufacturing runs, and then they subject them to a battery of tests, and it does all the durability testing and all that other kind of stuff. Volume production starts a couple of months before September. They have to build up a big inventory before it comes out. We're heading into that point where everything has to be finalized, and all the orders have to be into all the suppliers so that they can make all the parts that get shipped all to the assembly and so on. So it's getting nailed down, and we're starting to get some leaks that aren't going to change substantially between now and then.
So the latest leak is in regards to the iPhone 17 lineup, and I guess the design of the phone. We keep hearing that there's going to be some major changes, or maybe specifically there's one model with a major change. But now we're hearing from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman that the iPhone 17 Pro, it's going to end up looking a lot like the iPhone 16 Pro.
If this happens every year. Every year
Yes.
we get super excited from December to April, and then someone says, no, that's actually not happening. Maybe next year.
Specifics that he said is what the rumors we had was. The rumors we had was it's going to look like today's iPhones, except the camera bar is big and extends all the way across. And that's still the rumor. That's still what it is. He had just clarified that the camera bar is not going to have a different cut. It's not going to be black inside. It's going to be the same color as the body of the phone. That's it. That's what we had. That the Air is still coming, as far as we know. There's just no other major changes, but I don't think we were expecting other major changes.
There were some rumors that the sides wouldn't be as flat. The Air would be maybe tapered. There would be a two-tone design for the Pro models. There were rumors floating around that would be more dramatic than just a larger camera array, which were always maybe, maybe not. And now he says no. It's basically look at the phone, take the camera array and drag it across the whole phone, and that's your new design.
That's for the regular and the Pro, yeah. And then there'll be the Air, which is super skinny, which is still expected to come. Yeah, that two-tone design, but that was just the camera bar being black essentially on the inside. So that's what's changed, is that's not happening. What gets me is that they're that same rumor also said they're really shaking up with a major dramatic change to the thing in 2027. It's how many times have we heard
2 years?
Always
2 years.
In 2 years, they're going to have a massively different iPhone. That's just you won't. It's completely ground up redesigned. It's
everything. The Apple Car is 2 years away. The OLED MacBook Pro is 2 years away. Everything's always 2 years away. The thing you really want is just out of reach.
It's far enough just to be safe, but that predicting it, and then when it doesn't come to pass, being oh well, they just decided that it's not ready yet or whatever.
Right.
This is the 5th or 6th time that the folding iPhone is 2 years away. It's not that these things aren't happening. It's just that at some point you have a boy who cried wolf kind of situation here. When are you going to stop believing that it's 2 years away?
It's a symptom of the rumor culture, in the sense that these are real products. They are real rumors. I believe Apple had a vision to make a car at some point.
Oh, they had tons of employees.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
job postings and stuff.
when Gurman and Ming-Chi Kuo and John Prosser, whoever it is, gets wind of this, they have to frame it in a package that people are going to get. So like Jason said, 2 years is just long enough where we're going to forget these were like ever really made. We can say, oh, Apple changed their plans. And it's not something that people are going to expect to get immediately. It's a nice number that's just out of reach.
And to be fair, it likely is that they changed their plans. That's one of the way that Apple and a lot of these other very secretive companies work is they do a lot of prototypes and a lot of plans. And then as they get closer to where they have to choose what goes into production, they look at things and go like, well, how much is this going to cost? Can we do this? Does this meet these durability standards? At what point's the R&D on these things? And they pick a path. And that path has been very conservative lately.
One of the reasons why 2 years from now, 2027, is kind of picked up a little bit of steam is because that's basically the 20th anniversary of the iPhone?
20 years. It'll be 20 years since Steve Jobs, this is the Macworld San Francisco keynote that unveiled the phone.
Right.
Yeah. And then it shipped later, it shipped that year.
Right.
There's this idea of attaching more dramatic rumors to that timeline.
Which Apple did before. In 2017, 10 years after the original iPhone, we got the iPhone 10, which was really the iPhone 9, which is really the iPhone 8, honestly. But Apple decided to mark the year rather than the model. So the model then will be the iPhone
19. Yeah.
So Apple could do something similar, like here's an iPhone 19 and 19 Pro, here's the folding iPhone XX or whatever they're going to call it. There are things they could do there. But yeah, that seems like something they wouldn't let go unnoticed. The 20th anniversary.
The iPhone 10 was the last time we saw that kind of like really dramatic leap. And it was a big leap in price too. It was $999, which was like no iPhone was close back then. But you saw what they gave you for it. Like they were like, oh, they stuck on another camera. Face ID was brand new. That was the Face ID phone. It had an OLED screen. That was the OLED phone. Like there were just so many things that it did that the iPhone 8, which came out at the same time, didn't, You wonder if they're going to do the same thing. They're going to have a safe phone that costs the same things that the phones cost normally. And then maybe some more expensive, this is the iPhone of the future kind of thing.
Based on the prices, which looks like at least $2,000. And we'll get into this in a moment.
For folding?
Yeah. And with tariffs and with everything else that's happening right now, maybe way more than that. They're almost going to have a regular iPhone 19 or whatever they call it alongside it because, it's not going to be for most people to afford. Even the folding phones that are out there, they're expensive. The Samsung Galaxy Z is like $1,600. I mean, they're not cheap, and that's been out for many years now. So they've had time to engineer and research and develop it. But they're expensive. The screen's expensive, the hinge is expensive, the parts are expensive. It's all and Apple doesn't go cheap.
And that's assuming this 20th anniversary model is the folding phone, right? That could be another separate thing.
Sure.
And then we could just have something that's a very different design, regular slab of glass kind of phone.
Yeah.
The only hint that they've given about it is that it, quote, heavily features glass, which could mean anything.
Yeah.
That doesn't
the new
mean
ones
it's...
don't, right?
It doesn't mean it's
the current ones don't.
Yeah. That just doesn't mean it's... It doesn't mean it's a folding phone. It doesn't mean it's not a folding phone. Like you could take anything from that. It's like you said, it's 2 years out. Plenty of time to just change the rumors all the time. But that does kind of mean that they don't think that next year's iPhones are going to be dramatic.
Usually we hear grumblings about the next year's phone before the current year's phone comes out. We haven't heard much. We heard a lot about this one with the Air and the different designs. But with the exception of the modem. So we did hear about like Apple is targeting 2026 for its C2, presumably what it will be called, the C2 modem, with millimeter wave and more efficiency and better
performance in a lot of ways. And that should end up in like all the iPhones.
Supposedly. All the iPhones.
Yeah.
By next year. Yeah. So, but we haven't heard much in the way of anything to expect in the iPhone 18. Yeah.
I mean, thinking about that 2027 iPhone 19, maybe that iPhone 18 ends up just being a new phrase that I like to use from Mark Gurman, a chip and ship. where they just upgrade the chip and then that's it. Because they're setting up for 2019 or not 2019, iPhone 19.
If you look back on iPhone 15, they generally are. Like, we'll get tweaks to the camera, maybe the action button or something like that, but they're generally just, very minimal refreshes over the prior generation.
It's been fairly boring. What's the excitement has usually come from things that aren't design related. They're things like how much better are the cameras. The cameras are in the same place, they look the same, but like is it the sensors and camera modules and how the software works with it and all that stuff. So, for example, one of the most recent rumors that the iPhone 17 Pro and only the Pro will allow you to record the front and back cameras at the same time, which I remember being a thing Samsung phones did like a decade ago. I'm sure the holdup is recording video at the quality level Apple expects. But it's weird that this is an iPhone Pro feature and not just like a software upgrade for every iPhone. This feels like something every iPhone should be able to do. Considering that I can look at my front camera and back camera when I'm FaceTiming and stuff.
And they have the continuity camera with the desk view. Like, they do cool stuff with the camera. Like, this is probably table stakes. Should be table stakes by now.
This seems like one of those, like, why is this a Pro feature? I'm sure it has something to do with like bandwidth between the cameras and the A19 processor. Is it A19 processor, A19 Pro or whatever, where in order to record them both at 4K 60 at the same time or some nonsense like that.
So we just quickly go over what we're expecting in September. So we're going to get a standard iPhone 17, an iPhone 17 Pro.
Yep.
And then we're supposed to get an iPhone 17 Air.
Yeah, so there'll be a Pro Max, and regular, allegedly. The Plus, as Apple has done with that model for years now. First it was the Mini, then it was the Plus, and now it's going to be the Air. They're trying desperately to find that fourth model that people actually want to buy. Although I will say, I have the Plus, and I like it. I'm going to go back to the Pro Max or the Air, depending, because it's fine, it's good, but there's enough that I miss about the Pro phones. Like, I understand why people don't gravitate towards this model. Like, it feels like a standard iPhone with a large screen rather than a Pro iPhone. So, like, I get it. People love the Mini. Not enough people love the Mini. So, like, that's not coming back. So this new Air model, which is rumored to kind of slide into that $900 price range, but, as we'll talk about with tariffs and stuff, maybe not. But right now, like, that's the latest rumors, is that it's going to be cheaper than a Pro. The Plus is going to be gone, and I think this is going to be a little bit smaller than what the Plus would be, but still above the regular. It's the screen size is still kind of nebulous, but it's going to be obviously bigger than 6 inches. The Air is going to be like the one that they talk about the most, I think, in the keynote. It's going to be very thin, under 6 millimeters. Most likely the thinnest iPhone ever made, one of the thinnest phones ever made, if not the thinnest phone ever made. Single camera, a good camera like the iPhone 16e, but one camera, as the rumors say. Like I said, what is it, Jason? Maybe you know, but is it going to be 6.5, or is it closer to the 6.1 inch?
The last rumor I saw was that it is actually between the sizes of the iPhone 16 and then the Plus or Pro Max models. It's not as big as the Plus or Pro Max, but it's bigger than the regular.
I think it's 6.3. 6.3
I'm looking.
or something.
So some say 6.6, some say a little bit smaller, 6.5, but around there. Bigger than the standard iPhone, maybe not quite as big as the Pro Max.
Yeah, the 6.7 is the Pro Max and Plus models, right? And so it's not that, it's in between.
But the appeal will be the design. So much like they did with the iPad Pro last year, where they squished it and really played up its thinness in that commercial that Apple would like everyone to forget, that Crush commercial. It's going to be a similar thing where the thinness is the thing that draws you in, that gets you to go to the store to touch it, to try it, and then hopefully to buy it. That's the whole point here.
And the camera bump, which will be a camera bar, like all the phones have the thing cross, it'll be smaller. Well, it'll be wide and short because there's one camera, but deep. Like it'll stick out really far because the body's really thin, but they still need, that's the area where not only do you need the camera module, but there's other parts that need to go in there. All the Face ID, True Depth, all the front stuff goes there, but on the other side and everything. So there's a lot of, there's a lot going on in this phone. It and all the iPhone 17s are expected to finally upgrade the front camera to a 24 megapixel camera. And there'll probably be some software stuff to go along with that, like high resolution video or some different crop zooms, different things like that they do. We'll see. But it'll be nice to have a higher quality front camera.
Remember when they tried to make slow fees again a thing?
Yeah, I do. When they brought slow-mo to the front camera and they tried to make slow fees a word.
That never caught up.
That did not catch on. Not only did the word not catch on, but I do not see people posting slow motion front camera videos. It's hard to do anything worthy of slow motion while holding your camera.
Right. It's really just for like sports. Like everything else just looks silly in slow motion. Like it's got to be something that would normally be too fast to see that you slow down to make.
Yeah, or it just looks really cool, like a fire hydrant going off, or just whatever. But you would shoot all those things with your back camera. So I am most curious about. Obviously, the Air is the one with the big change, but I'm most curious to see how they manage battery life with a very, very, very thin phone.
Yeah, there's talks that it won't have a Pro processor. Obviously, the one camera, so there are sacrifices there to free up space and cooling and such. Yeah, I agree. Like, are they going to cut back? Are they going to cut back on the battery life claims? They didn't on the iPad Pro, but the iPad is the weirdest device ever. Like every single iPad ever has gotten 10 hours of battery life. Like from the first one to the Mini to every one. So
it's just like the Apple Watch. It's just like
the iPhone generally goes up with each generation, and people are accustomed to it lasting through the day easily. So we'll see.
The rumors of the portless iPhone, that's further down the line. That's not these iPhones, right? Yeah.
That's not
even 2 years from now.
That's like
that's 2 years from now.
They didn't even put a real date on that. It's just like one of those things that. So what brought it up was who's the company that did the next fold with that so thin that the USB, like it's basically as thin as the USB-C port. And people were saying, like, all right, so what do we do? Like, what's next? Because if we can't get any thinner than this, it is Apple. If we can't get any thinner than this, what's the point of, or not what the point, but what's the next level? And then that's when they were talking about that Apple's looking at a phone that doesn't have a USB-C port at all, just works with MagSafe and wireless, really cuts down on the thinness. But that's, I would assume, 5 years away at the I mean, people aren't ready to get rid of USB for one.
Who knows? Yeah. Apparently, they did get a ruling from the EU that just clarification, like, can we ship this? Can we ship a phone with no USB-C charging port? And they said, yeah. I mean, you have to, I think they have to ship the wireless charging pad or whatever with it. But as long as that's got a USB-C end, which is what everybody expects, it's how AirPower works, then yeah, they're good to go.
Yeah, that ruling is, if it has wired charging, it has to be USB-C. But if it doesn't have to. Like, you don't have to add one.
Well, and the wireless charging pad for it, like the connector, the AirPower thing, has to be USB-C, not A or something like that on the other end. But that's fine. That's so Apple can do it.
But that's not. Yeah, that's further down the line. We're not going to see.
They have to solve some issues. Like there's some things that they do in terms of sort of test and recovery and stuff like that require the USB-C port. Like going into recovery mode and reflashing your phone and stuff, you cannot do that all wirelessly now. If you need to reload your firmware onto a bricked phone and put it in recovery mode and hook it up to a computer, there's no wireless solution for that. So they're going to have to figure those kind of things out.
Presumably that's MagSafe, but like Jason says, like that has to be developed.
Well, and just the data transfer. Like how are you going to load on gigabytes of stuff? Like MagSafe doesn't transmit gigabytes of data. If your phone's bricked, is Wi-Fi going to work? I don't know. They're going to have to figure out something to do this.
Speaking of things to figure out, when these new iPhones do come out, you might have to figure out if they fit in your budget. That was a bad segue. I was trying really hard, but it just wasn't a good segue. If you haven't been paying attention, there have been some new tariffs that have been put out that could affect the price of items such as the iPhone, but it's kind of not really clear right now.
Well, they don't go into effect until tomorrow fully.
Yeah. It would be midnight. Midnight tonight would be the day that they take effect.
Yeah, and we won't really know until Apple makes an announcement. And maybe we'll have an idea if, say, like the current product lineup starts to, has some price changes, and then that could kind of foreshadow what could happen in the fall with the iPhone 17.
Yeah, I mean, Jason knows more than all of us because he wrote a whole story about it. But would Apple, just hypothetically, do either you think Apple would raise prices before the launch of a new product?
They may have to.
They might not have no choice. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way this works is there's a 10% blanket rate on every country, right? Which is in effect, and then there's these quote discounted reciprocal tariffs, and that's a misnomer term because they are not reciprocal tariffs. They are just based on the value of a trade imbalance. It has nothing to do with other countries' tariffs, and those are individual per country, and it's just literally half of whatever they said the trade imbalance was with that country. That's how they came up with this formula. What that means is that China, where Apple's Foxconn factory, where most of the iPhones are made, all the iPhones that come to the United States are produced in Shenzhen, China, at a Foxconn facility. That's where all the final assembly and stuff happens. The tariff is 34%, that reciprocal tariff, but there's already 10% tariffs on China, so that's a total of 54%. What that means is that when Apple imports it, it sits in customs until Apple pays 54% of the declared value of those phones. What's the declared value? I don't know. It's whatever Apple says it is without getting sued. It's basically the wholesale.
Yeah, so it's not the MSRP of the phone. It's
the
value Apple puts on it.
What you would kind of call the wholesale value, but Apple doesn't wholesale things. It's more than the bill of materials, but it's less than the retail. So like your iPhone 16 that costs you $799, that's probably got a declared value of like $500. That's sort of its bill of materials plus assembly and testing, that kind of cost. So Apple would have to pay 54% of $500. That's a lot. $270 per phone to bring them in. The question is, can Apple absorb that cost? Like right now, if that phone, essentially, if the quote value of that phone's $500 and Apple sells it for $800, they're making $300 and they're about to pay $270. Would Apple be able to make $30 per iPhone? Well, technically they could, but there's not a chance. So they would pass on some of this cost to consumers. The question is how much? How much can they absorb and how much can they do? The higher priced items that have additional RAM and storage, they'll be able to absorb much more of that cost because Apple marks that stuff up insanely, like over what their actual costs are. So Macs with more RAM and more storage, they cost a whole lot, and they'll be able to, their tariff, the MSRPs are really high, but the Apple will be able to absorb more of that. So it's that, and then it's where things are made. AirPods are mostly made in Vietnam. Vietnam's tariff rate will be 46%. So that doesn't escape it. There's talk about moving a lot of stuff to India. The tariff rate there will be 26%. So that's a lot lower. But it's still 26% is, that becomes more something Apple can absorb, but Apple's expected to increase iPhone production in India to about 30 million units, 30 million per year. 30 million units is not enough for India and the United States. It's not enough for the whole thing. So it's going to be really weird about where does Apple produce it? All this other, how does the math shake out? How much are they going to absorb versus how much are they going to pass on to us?
We also don't know what Apple has done to plan for this because this isn't a surprise. So they might have amped up production 3 months ago and have like a stockpile of somewhat of iPhones ready to go that are still, that are in the U.S. don't have to aren't beholden to the tariffs because they're already here. So we don't know. Usually Apple keeps about a 5-week supply chain thing. Tim Cook likes to talk about that. I have to assume in preparation for this, they maybe doubled that. So they could have enough phones to sell for another, say, 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't a way for Apple to call up the factory and say, produce twice as many now. It just doesn't.
3 months ago, there might have been to ramp that up.
Although nobody was expecting this much. So I think it was already ramped. There was a story about how they very, very quickly tried to take possession of several shipping containers full of Apple stuff before the deadline, before these new tariffs take effect, because everybody wants to clear customs before they start to have to pay all this extra money. Most of I went around and looked at all the different financial analyst stories about all of the notes about what they expect to happen. And most people say, expect in the short term, meaning not necessarily tomorrow, but if the tariffs stick around before the iPhone 17 launches in the fall, expect prices to go up something along the lines of 15%, 17, 18%, which means something like you might see an iPhone 16 instead of being $799, it would be $849 or $899, right? AirPods 2 might go from $249 to $279. Price increases, but not, oh my God, why is my iPhone $3,000? Which is, we've seen some crazy things about that. And then that's with Apple really eating into their own profit margins. Then we would expect when the iPhone 17 launches, when the M5 Max launch later this year, and so on, to see a price. Those would start at a price that is more reflective of what the tariffs they have to pay for these things are, which means much higher.
And it's not uncommon for Apple to do that stuff. Overseas, it does it fairly regularly, where it'll adjust pricing due to currency fluctuations. Way back when, I think it was the original iMac G4 came out, they bumped prices temporarily by $100 at the time. And I don't remember why. Maybe currency, maybe because of production. They have done this. The prices that you talk about, Jason, $50, $30, that seems to be palatable for consumers. I think there's a psychological barrier.
Yeah, with the iPhones, since so many people in the US, pay for their iPhone just on some phone plan or something like that, and it ends up being a couple bucks a month different over your 3-year payment plan that you have and stuff, that's not going to be noticed. What's going to be noticed is if these stick around and the iPhone 17 line suddenly starts at $150 more or something like that, which, just really pricing in these tariffs to preserve some profit margin. It's going to be pretty big. And there's almost no Apple product that escapes this. The closest would be the Mac Pro, which is actually made in Texas.
Both of them.
What? Yeah, both of them. They're both made in Texas. Yeah. So the Mac Pro is made in Texas, but parts for it are subject to tariffs, and which is less. It's the wholesale and stuff like that, but still, those things happen. So
yeah, I mean that's true of U.S. car makers get parts from overseas. Every U.S. product, not every, but most U.S. products, they have parts from all over the world. We're a global economy, so it's very few companies and products that are immune from extra costs if these do go into effect like we think they will.
Yeah, and stick around. I mean, there's always this is a fast-moving situation that has already changed a couple times since they were announced last week. Almost certain that there will be individual countries trying to strike a deal to change the rate. There will be industries trying to get exempted or get a different rate. There will be companies trying to get exempted or get a different rate. So all this stuff is very fluid and fast moving and will change over time. I also looked into, when I was writing this up, the whole point of this is to bring back U.S. manufacturing for these things. Could Apple make iPhones in the United States, what would that mean? iPhones, AirPods, whatever. Anything other than the Mac Pro, which they do make in the United States. And the answer is like, well, it's possible, of course, but it's not something that could even conceivably happen quickly. Tim Cook mentioned this back. I want to read this quote. He spoke at the Fortune Global Forum in China back in 2017. They were asking about how heavily they lean on Chinese manufacturing. And he said, I'll quote, "The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China has stopped being a low labor cost country many years ago, and that this is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. The products we do require really advanced tooling, and the precision that you have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here," he means in China. Mm-hmm. In the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers, and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. That vocational expertise is very deep here. So if Apple was going to manufacture the iPhone, for example, in the United States, or at least just replace their Shenzhen manufacturing and keep the India manufacturing and stuff, they have to make tens of millions of iPhones with really, really advanced and precise manufacturing practices and tooling and so on, in a factory that doesn't exist.
Right. And with people that don't exist.
Right. So the people don't exist, or they're hard to come by, and they need thousands of them. And then they need to build the factory. And I don't know if you've ever seen a factory get built, but large advanced manufacturing factories take years from breaking ground. And then forget all the permitting and regulations and all that other stuff that needs to happen before you can even break ground. It's a couple of years before you're churning out iPhones from breaking ground. So it's not that it can't be done. It's that if they went gung-ho about it today and they started like an educational program to like train materials researchers and tooling experts and all this other stuff today, and they started getting permits for a factory location today and all that other stuff, the first US made iPhones would roll out of the factory in like 4 or 5 years.
Despite what Cook says, it's also going to be cheaper to do all that in China.
Yeah, the labor cost, I tried to look it up. It fluctuates at the factory there. It's seasonal and stuff like that, but it's about $3 an hour. So if you had a terribly priced US labor,
triple
like
that
$10,
right, US prices.
Yeah, it's like triple it. It would add about $100 worth of cost to the iPhone. The real issue is just all the other stuff. And then even imagining you did that, all these parts come from other places, right? Corning in the US makes the Gorilla Glass that they branded their own thing. But the displays are from Samsung or LG in Korea. HK Hynix in Korea makes RAM. Japan makes RAM for them. The main processors made at TSMC's facility in Taiwan. TSMC's making
the display is Samsung. Yeah.
Yeah, Samsung or LG's done it in the past, but those are their only real options. TSMC has plants here. They're building more plants here, but they're one or two steps. They're a couple of years behind their best facilities in Taiwan, just in terms of like how the quality of the chips they can make. All those things need to be onshored as well, or they're all subject to tariffs as well. So it would be a multi-year project that would still result in a more expensive iPhone, even if you were avoiding the tariffs, right? The tariff costs. So there's no way out of this that doesn't result in a more expensive iPhone outside of just like cutting some deal where you drop the tariffs. That's just what's happening.
The manufacturing in the U.S. issue isn't just a tech thing. Do you guys listen to Search Engine podcast? Search Engines did a recent episode with a YouTuber. I forget his name, but do you know the YouTube channel Smarter Every Day? Yeah. And I forget the guy's name. And he wanted to make a barbecue scrubber all in the US, from the parts to the manufacturing. And it was the hardest thing to do in the world, because just something like the tooling. Nobody does tooling in the U.S. anymore, and he had a difficult time just trying to even make a mold for the handle of a barbecue scrubber. So if someone can't even make a barbecue scrubber in the U.S., making an iPhone in the U.S. is going to be 100 times as hard.
Yeah, there was a social media post I saw from a guy who does other things, but he makes hot sauce. He has a company that makes super fancy custom hot sauce in his fancy box. It's really expensive, and he has a little custom model. And he's like, getting this custom glass bottle made here was like 8 times the cost of what it was in China. I found a company that makes perfume bottles that can make this custom mold. The lid is 3 pieces because it's like cork and a metal stamp and blah blah blah. The label was like 12 times the price, like all these other things. It's like a tariff is not 800%. Like even with the tariffs, I'm not going to move the thing back here. I can't afford to. Like I can't charge $300 for this hot sauce. Yeah, it is a thing where either some weird deals are going to get cut, or these are going to be with us for a while, because even if all that kind of sort of really advanced manufacturing and tooling comes back to the United States, it's a years-long process. This has been going on in Southeast Asia for decades. They've been building this sort of infrastructure and this expertise and stuff for 30 years. So it's good. It's going to be a while.
Yeah, TSMC just built a plant in Arizona, and that took 5 or 6, 7 years to do.
Yeah, and it's not even, it produces.
It's not right. It's not even like
5
full capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's rolling out test capacity, and it's like 5 nanometer, and which is several years behind. The first 5 nanometer chips rolled out of Taiwan years ago and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's good that they're doing these things. It's interesting. It's good that they're doing these things. I don't know what's going to happen with that, because that sort of became possible because of the CHIPS Act, which this administration has gutted. So there's like, it's hard to see sort of advanced chip manufacturing booming in the United States after that was gutted. It's sort of a carrot versus stick thing. That was a carrot. We were going to make all this money available for this, and there now the money's spigot's cut off, and they're going to say do it or suffer the tariffs. And so the bottom line is that if you're an Apple, if you think you're going to need an Apple product soon, get it now. And if not, just expect some price increase short term, and then if nothing changes, big price increases long term.
And there's also the whole world around Apple that's going to be severely affected. Apple is big enough to obviously absorb a lot of this and handle it and pivot and all that stuff. There's a lot of companies that are not. A lot of smaller like what that we know, like, I don't know, Belkin or whoever you want to talk about.
Your cheap chargers, like and cables, your cheap Anchor cables, and
small case companies and small niche, beloved companies that have used Apple. Not use is the wrong word, but have adopted the Apple community as their identity. And now they're going to be, like they can't absorb 50% tariffs on stuff like that. Like their customers, they stop paying. They're small companies, they're going to go out of business. So there's a lot around Apple that's going to be affected in the next couple months as well.
Yeah, your favorite iPhone stabilizing gimbal, photography thing, like, they can't absorb the tariff themselves. They can't make that thing here. They're in a bind.
Well, as Jason pointed out, it's a fluctuating situation. Things can change between now and
by the time you hear this, so many things could be different.
That's true. Right. So literally, like they're supposed to go into effect in midnight. 10 hours or whatever. So by the time you hear this might be moot.
It might be different.
They might put a 90-day reprieve or a 30-day reprieve or who knows.
That's happening with TikTok to speak to apps and Apple stuff and everything. That was that new deadline came by, and now now they bumped the deadline back, and there's a question about whether they're able to bump the deadline back. Apple talked to the Attorney General and got assurances from her before taking it off the App Store today. It's everything moves fast and nobody knows what's going on.
Well, that does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 929. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, on YouTube at the Macworld Podcast channel, or through any other podcast app. Do you have any comments or questions? Send us an email at podcast@macworld.com or contact us through Blue Sky, Facebook, or Threads. Just search for Macworld and look for the Blue Mouse logo. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.